RPN, Radio Philippines Network Incorporated, DXKO. 13 sa Sindang Utso sa Bayan sa inyong radyo. RPN DXKO, ang Radyo Ronda, TV sa Ratbayan sa Cagayan de Oro. Sidyahan na may galaon sa katawhan, andang mo serbisyo sa tanan. Ang RPN DXKO Radyo Ronda, sakop sa KBP, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Are you a Filipino living in Middle East, Europe, Asia and the Pacific, USA or Canada? You are our story. You are our Filipinos World. The Filipinos World Saturday every 4 to 5 p.m. only here on RPN DXKO 1368.
To Mindanao and to the Filipinos across the globe. My name is Agnes and you are watching live here in the Filipinos World. We are broadcasting live from Cagayan de Oro City, Philippines, powered by RPN DXKO Teleradio. We are also live streaming in Facebook via facebook.com/RPN Cagayan de Oro 1368. Today is July 3, 2021, and we are celebrating the International Day of Cooperatives, which is an annual celebration of the cooperative movement that takes place every first Saturday of July since 1923. Tomorrow is July 4 and is the Independence Day, when Americans take the day to celebrate all that is Americans. They remember the great sacrifices of their forefathers in fighting for independence of the United States from Britain. Advance Happy Independence Day to the Americans. This afternoon in the Filipinos World will focus to discuss on the plastics paradox, facts of a brighter future, with Dr. Chris De Armit of the Phantom Plastics and Miss Emma Barber of Degrade Dubai. But let us try to understand what plastic is all about, courtesy of the National Geographic. Let's watch this.
Plastics have become such an entrenched part of our lives. But what exactly is plastic? And how is it made? Before plastic became so ubiquitous, it underwent a transformation from being a strictly natural product to being synthetically and widely produced. Some of the earliest uses of plastic date as far back as 3,500 years ago, when the Olmecs of Mexico used naturally occurring plastics, sap from gum trees, to create rubber balls. During the mid-19th and 20th centuries, synthetic plastics like celluloid and bakelite made their debut and were used for decades. On the molecular level, Plastics are made of polymers, which are long, flexible chains of chemical compounds. This structure allows plastics to be easily molded and shaped, especially under heat and pressure. Unlike the rubber used by the Olmecs, most of today's plastics are man-made and derived from fossil fuels. Crude oil and natural gas are primary sources as they provide a cheap alternative to plastic made from plants.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, National Geographic, for the video. Let us welcome our host for this afternoon live from London, United Kingdom. He is the TFW's executive producer and environment and sanitation consultant, Mr. Paul Makevicius. Hi, Paul. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm broadcasting live from London, United Kingdom. So we're here today to have a very important discussion with our guests on the plastics paradox. Our first speaker this afternoon would have been Dr. Chris Diarmid, PhD, president of Phantom Plastics, based in Cincinnati, Ohio, author of the book, The Plastics Paradox, and voted #1 plastic expert. And he's been seen on various prestigious news media, 60 Minutes, BBC, Sky News. Well, we were supposed to put him on board live from Cincinnati, but because of the time difference, he can't make it. However, don't worry, we will be showing a video talk of why Chris considers a lot of paradoxes on plastics and why there are facts behind it for a much brighter future. So I do urge everyone to have a look at his website after this program to really understand the truth behind plastic. Let's watch this recorded video talk from Dr. Diarmid.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and thanks for everyone for attending. And I'd especially like to thank the audience because we live in a strange world where people just read a headline and think it's the truth, and the journalists aren't really checking anything. So you're one of the extreme minority who actually are interested in hearing science and facts before you make up your mind. So I applaud you for that. That's it's a rare quality. And so here are some numbers. If you were to replace plastic bags with paper bags, you would need about 3 times more energy. You'd make way more CO2. You have way more water usage. And you'd have to cut down millions and millions more trees, 2 million more trees a year just in Europe to replace plastic bags with paper bags. And the ironic thing is the Swedish guy who patented the plastic bag wanted to save trees. His whole goal was to save trees and save the forests by replacing paper bags with plastic bags. And he succeeded. And now we're going back again and erasing everything he did by using paper bags. And as one example, I went to the local supermarket and I weighed a grocery bag from Kroger, right? It weighs 5.5 grams for a paper bag, for a plastic bag. Plastic bag, 5.5 grams. That's about as much as 1 game die. If you took a game die from Monopoly, that's about 5.5 grams of plastic. And then I weighed the paper bag and it was 60 grams, right? It does the exact same job. As we can see, it's worse for the environment and generates 10 times more waste. And this is what people are campaigning for. It's true. Okay, so let's look at waste. What do we know about waste? So I had to read again tons and tons of articles about waste to understand what's going on here and get to the facts. This is what we're told. We're drowning in plastic. But what's the reality? Here's the reality. Plastics are about 13% of solid municipal waste. That's down here. So paper is twice as much. Paper and cardboard, twice as much waste as plastics, and I've never seen a single headline about it. It's like the paper industry's got Harry Potter's invisibility cloak on. It's the biggest scandal I've ever seen, right? It's less green than plastic on average, and it generates twice as much waste and not a single word said about it. Food generates a huge amount of waste as well. Yard trimmings. And a thing that's not on here is rubble. Building rubble is enormous. So if you look at the book called Rubbish, ! They analyzed what's in landfills, and they said that if you took paper and building rubbish together, that's more than 50% of overall waste. So that means plastics is about 10% overall once you add in building rubble, because it's similar to the paper at 25%. So plastics is about 10% of overall solid waste. This is only solid municipal waste as defined by the EPA in the US. That's why it says 13 here, because it doesn't count the rubble. So we can see there are a lot of sources of waste, and this is puzzling, right? Plastics is definitely a major contributor here, but why are we focusing 100% of our money, 100% of our attention? If you look at LinkedIn, you'll see 100% of the posts are about plastic, never about paper, never, sometimes about food, one or two, never about yard trimmings, never about metal, never about rubber and leather. It's incredible. How are we going to solve a waste problem by focusing on 10% of the problem? Focusing 100% of our money and marketing and efforts. We've got whole people like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's doing a wonderful job, but even they seem to only post about plastics. And you can't solve a problem by only looking at 10% of it. It doesn't make any sense. So this is what I said about perspective, right? You have to keep things in perspective, and this is what the slide does. And here's an example, right? This is what would happen if you were to take the plastic piece on top of this distribution. So this is the chart we had before showing the amount of different waste, and plastic is the blue one. Let's take the blue one away and replace it with something that's 3 or 4 times higher by stretching the other ones upwards. And this is what we see. We would go from having this pile on the left, which is, you know, we generate waste. We're a modern society. We generate too much waste. That's correct. We should reduce it. Absolutely correct. But if we remove the plastic part, we would generate far more waste than we do today. Especially the food waste is important because food takes an enormous amount of energy and CO2 and so forth to make. So generating more food waste would be awful for the environment. So we've been using plastic banknotes. Not all of them, but many countries have been using plastic banknotes for years, and they print 8 billion a year, which is the same as the world population. So we're printing one of these plastic banknotes per person per year, and we have been for decades. How many of these plastic banknotes made of polypropylene do you find when you go for a walk in your park? Do you find them everywhere? Do you find them on the beach when you go for a swim on your holidays? Do you find them fluttering down out of the air as you're going along in your car? No, I've never seen one. I've never seen one. There's 8 billion printed a year for decades, and I've never seen one on the floor. And that proves to me that plastic is not the cause of litter. It's people, right? Because if you have a plastic piece like this and it has a value, nobody will drop it. They will look after it, and if it is dropped, somebody will pick it up, right? So that proves to you that a piece of plastic is only being dropped because somebody dropped it and was careless, because it didn't have enough value. And that is exactly why these deposit schemes work so well. So these have been produced for decades, 8 billion printed a year, one per person on the planet. You never see one on the street. And this is why these deposit systems work. So many countries are running these deposit schemes where you take a PET bottle, which is too cheap to bother recycling. They give it a value of whatever, $1 or 50 cents. They get 97% of them back. They recycle each one 12 times in Norway. And the whole system becomes incredibly green. PET bottle is the greenest solution to begin with. And when you recycle it, it becomes greener and greener and greener every recycling round you do. So this is incredibly efficient, and it does work. And that's because they assigned a value to that PET bottle in order that it's not disposed of by irresponsible people. So the next topic I had to look into was ocean litter, microplastics. This is the image we're presented with, but is it true? So here's an actual analysis, and this has been studied for decades, right? So people have looked at these gyres we talked about. We're told that there are gyres, you know, these swirling islands, floating islands. I saw just yesterday somebody posted, there's swirling islands twice the size of Texas, full of plastic, and this is why we have to crack down on this nasty plastic industry. So what do you find when you actually look at a scientific study where scientists have trawled these things back and forth, collected every piece of plastic for decades, analyzed it, quantified it, and here's what you see. Here are the different amounts of plastic. The short bars here are just regular ocean, right? How much you find in a regular part of the ocean. And it's hard to imagine how much this really is, but it's about, let's say that's 50 grams per square kilometer, right? So that's not very much. That's about the same as if you took 130 bathtubs of water and you had one piece of plastic the size of your fingernail. That's about how much plastic you find in a regular part of the ocean. If you look at these gyres, people have specifically said they don't exist, right? So here is, there is no floating island, right? They don't exist. You can't find them. If you can swim through them and not see them, you can sail through them and not find them. You can look in from a satellite, and you won't find any floating islands the size of Texas. It's just pure fiction. They've made up this strong mental image to frighten people into giving donations and furthering their own cause. And it's absolutely shameful. There is not one piece of scientific evidence to support that. So they always pick, the green groups are very clever, right? They always pick polar bears or something you can't go and check on and say that it's a problem. Because if they pick something you could see, it would be obvious that they were lying. So here we go. Here's the amount of plastic in the North Pacific gyre, and we've got about 250 grams per kilometer squared, and I'll give you some examples later on about how much that exactly is. Talk about how did we get to this ridiculous situation where people are just believing a bunch of nonsense. And the reason is deception and greed. There have been two recent books. One's called Apocalypse Never, and the other one's called Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout. And both of these books are by people who are in the green movement, and they couldn't bear to be in it anymore. They realized that these people are totally anti-science. They discard all science. They don't even have scientists in many cases, and they publish complete nonsense and scare the pants off of the public in order to get their donations. So there have been two exposés recently from insiders who say, look, this is how these people behave. This is I can send you a whole report on this, or buy either of those books, and you'll see that some of these companies are actually losing. I mean, they get hundreds of millions, right, of donations by scaring people. So people who started off with good intentions can become, just a big business like any other. And they're even being having their. I don't want to attack anyone in particular, but Greenpeace gets a lot of press. So if you do a search, they come up a lot. And you see that they're even losing their charitable status because governments are saying these guys are not providing a service that's helping anyone. So that's unfortunate, right? The public think that they can trust green groups, but in reality, they're just another business trying to make a buck out of this thing. And that's why we need scientists to come out, and we need somebody to present themselves as a strong lobby group, and not to lobby for plastics, but to lobby for truth. I'm not into lobbying for plastics. I just want people to have the facts so they can make smart decisions. So the conclusion is that plastics, especially these three, often turn out to be good green solutions to many of the things we use today. If we were to replace them, we will do tremendous damage. I mean, meaning vastly more CO2, way more energy, way more waste, and way more water usage. There is a litter problem in some places, but that's due to human behavior. Ocean plastic comes from places which are not the same places who are donating the money. And certain green groups are doing more harm than good because they're not really green groups. They're just mechanisms for raising money, it seems. So what should we do, right? We should use less material. We are wasteful, that's right. We should use less material. Don't take a straw. You want to be green? Don't take a straw. It's easy, right? Don't take a lid for your soft drink cup. That's absolutely right. Don't buy water in a plastic bottle, right? Just get it out of the tap. That's been proven to be greener, right? There are a lot of things we can do to be green, but demonizing plastics and replacing them with materials that are proven to do more harm is just silly. And it's not even silly. It's shocking and frightening because it's the future of our children, which we're throwing away based on misconceptions. So recycle, dispose of things properly, and so on. And prefer the greenest material, right? If that's wood, pick wood. Do a quick Google search. And if you can't decide, you can't quickly find information, as a rule of thumb, the thing which is lightest is often the greenest because there's less material there. Or the thing that's cheapest is often the greenest because when you add up a life cycle analysis, it's materials and transportation and all of these other things, many of the same things that go into making up the cost of the material. So if you take a plastic straw, it costs 1 cent and the paper straw costs 2 cents. The plastic one is lighter. It's 50% of the weight, and it turns out to be cheaper as well because it's greener. So ironically, the greenest solution is often the cheapest one. So here's my final thought I want to leave you with. You can be for the environment, or you can be against plastics, but you can't be both. So this is what I ask people who are so ardent against plastics. I'm like, are you more passionate against plastics than you are for the environment? Because that's what you're telling me. You're telling me that you don't care about facts, you don't care about science, you don't care about 24...
All right. Thank you so much for that pre-recorded video from Dr. Chris the Armit. Paul, I'm giving the floor to you now.
Thank you, Agnes. So I don't think you could have watched that program or listened to that presentation and not have most, if not all, of your thoughts about plastic completely challenged. I certainly did. As I said at the start, please do have a look at plasticsparadox.com. You may need to look at these videos more than once. Take your time, because for the first time, you're getting some very clear information based on scientific data. And it's an opportunity, with no pun intended, to scare the pants back on with good facts based on lobbying for the truth. Chris made the point at the end, passionate against plastic or for the environment. Well, if you've got the facts, you can actually understand how to do both intelligently. So according to Dr. Diarmid, everything we know about plastics is nothing more than internet gossip, and it's untrue. He said, and I'm quoting him, "I don't care if people are against plastics based on the facts, but at present, people are against plastics based on clear, unsubstantiated lies." That's a problem because we need to start with the truth if we're going to make wise decisions for a brighter future. If you care, please look at the evidence, then decide. If you don't, then you'll be harming the environment by making poor choices. I want to discuss this, and there's a lot of things we need to get through, so apologies if it seems like we are racing ahead, but it's important to try and cover the subject matter. I've got with me, gracing us once again with her presence, the Managing Director of D-Grade Dubai, Miss Emma Barber. Hi Emma, welcome again.
Hi Paul, thank you very much for having me.
Our pleasure as always. As we've seen and heard, and explained by Dr. Diarmid on the plastics paradox, a question: should we get rid of plastics, and are they bad for the environment?
Are you asking me?
I'm going to ask you that. I'm going to maybe comment on what Chris has said, but I want to bring you in on the discussion. So let's hear from you, Emma.
Should we get rid of plastics, and are plastics bad? Well, absolutely, categorically, no, we should not get rid of plastics. They were actually invented in the first place to actually address a problem of too much paper, too much waste. We were having to cut down too many trees. And plastics were invented for a reason, because they're cheap, they're recyclable, they can have a long life cycle, they can stay around for a long time if you reuse them and recycle them. So they were invented for a reason. I think that the message about plastic has been lost, partly because we are a very careless and wasteful society, and we think that we can throw something away and it will just go away, and quite patently that doesn't happen. So what we do is we find that things are being thrown away and they're creating a problem because we're not disposing of them properly. So we're seeing huge issues with pollution in beaches and in environments and deserts and countryside because people aren't disposing of their trash properly. And that's not just plastic, but plastic seems to be getting a bad press because it's light, it blows around, it floats, and it gets washed up on the beaches and we can see it. But not all plastic is equal, and I'm sure we'll come to that. So should we get rid of it? Absolutely not. But should we dispose of it properly? Absolutely we should.
Okay, well, you'll see, thank you, Emma. You'll see on the Plastics Paradox website, there's a Q&A, which is very interesting. We've taken a lot of these questions from the website because they actually focus clearly what the subject matter is all about. And it's about refuting myths, untruths, perceptions that need hard data to understand what's really going on. For example, to answer the question just given to Emma, plastics are actually better for the environment than metal, glass, cotton, and usually paper. The energy required to produce those other materials is far greater. Let's move on. Should we replace, Emma, PET bottles, PET bottles with aluminium cans or glass bottles?
We could do that, and there is a place for reusing an aluminium bottle or a reusable bottle when you're going out and about. But in order for it to be more green and more sustainable than plastic, you would have to use these reusable items hundreds and hundreds of times because of the energy and the resources it uses to actually make these items. They need to be used so many times, whereas a plastic bottle can be used once. It's light, it's hygienic, it's low carbon footprint, and it can be recycled. So actually, it's better to use the plastic bottle and put it in the recycling bin than it is to use a reusable cup a couple of times. People tend to have them in their cars or in their, in their bags when they're traveling, and then they forget, or they're dirty and they don't want to use them. So they just don't get used enough. Glass is very hard to make and very hard to recycle. And it's dangerous. You drop a glass bottle and, it's easy to cut yourself and hurt yourself. That doesn't happen with plastic. So there's no really good reason to replace plastic with aluminium and glass. And actually, when we do, both of those two packaging solutions actually take up a lot more space in volume and weight in landfill, whereas plastic, even if it does go to landfill, at least it's taking up less space. So there's no reason to replace plastic with those items, no.
Well, indeed, and I think one of the key points, and it will come up again in our discussion, but it's kind of at the center of understanding why do we think we do what we do when it comes to using plastic or recycling. Plastic, it's far greener. It's far greener, actually. And there's one of the paradoxes that why would you think that if you've been fed a lot of propaganda telling you the opposite? There's another question which is on the website again. Should we replace plastics because they create a waste problem? And I'm just going to read out some of the data that Chris has researched. Basically, no. Plastics are less than 0.5% of all waste, and they are proven to reduce overall waste creation, as Emma has mentioned. Replacing plastics means creating 3 to 4 times more waste for every pound of plastic replaced. So this was again on the Chris's presentation we just listened to. Another question for you, Emma: should we ban plastics because they cause litter?
Well, plastic isn't creating litter all by itself. It's human behavior. And what I really loved about Chris's presentation is the banknote example, where we just don't see banknotes littering the pavements and floating around in the ocean because people don't throw it away because it's got a value. If we could only persuade people that plastic had a value and is a resource, not a waste material, then I think that we wouldn't see so much plastic littering as well. I know we're going to talk about this later, but we do need support from governments who don't always have recycling at the top of their priority list because it's quite expensive. But if only we could ensure that the countries where most of the plastic waste is coming from recycle better, then of course we wouldn't have to ban plastic because we would have a better solution for reusing it.
Absolutely, and again, another critical point is, not to demonize plastic, but to understand we people, the consumer, the users, we are at the core of everything we use, including plastic. And, it's really about education and possibly legislation to endorse, more responsibility as far as its use.
And people talk a lot about wanting to be green, and they're worried about the future. They're worried about the planet, how it's being left for their children, their grandchildren. And they're all very worried and talking about it, and yet not putting their plastic in the recycling bin at the same time. So, we have to take personal responsibility. We can't just worry and moan and complain and say, well, plastic is terrible. We have to make sure that we're using it and being responsible ourselves.
Absolutely, and another area which gets a lot of publicity, and it's quite scary if it's backed up with strong visuals. It's do plastic items harm marine wildlife? Well, according to Chris, the research says it's abandoned nets in particular cause harm. However, if you were to try and replace the plastic nets with rope nets, that doesn't solve the problem. We're back to the same issue, which is the problem is the people who abandon the nets, not plastic. Another obvious bone of contention, let's say, with the demonizing of plastic, and it's the one that we all know as consumers: should we ban plastic bags, Emma?
Again, exactly in the same way. There's 24 life cycle analysis, LCAs on plastic bags, and every single LCA proves that plastic bags are the greenest option. Because if you buy a bag for life, it's been shown that you have to use it literally hundreds of times. I think 240 times, you have to use your bag for life before it actually becomes as green as using a single-use plastic bag once. People think that plastic bags do not decompose or degrade, but they absolutely do. They degrade actually quicker than an orange peel when you leave them outside. And I think we've all gone to a cupboard to pull out a plastic bag just to find it disintegrates as you pull it out of the drawer or the cupboard. So it does degrade. It does degrade back into carbon and oxygen, just like anything else. And it's actually the greenest possible solution. So no, we shouldn't ban plastic bags.
Indeed, and just to again cite the data from Chris, plastic bags are the greenest alternative. Changing to paper bags would mean cutting down millions more trees per year, more carbon dioxide released, generating up to 10 times more waste. The life cycle analysis professional, one of them, examined all 24 studies on bags and concluded, I quote, from all 24 reports and reviews assessed, the actual LCA life cycle analysis on grocery bags overwhelmingly point to plastic as the material with least environmental impact, both at single-use level and multi-purpose. That's Neil Shackleton, the founder of Medulla. So when you've got the science, when you've got the research, when you've got the data to back it up, they're actually quite simple concepts. You know, plastic is not the demon. Plastic is not the enemy. Understand, with a little bit of effort, being channeled in the right way, we can actually change our behavior. And that's kind of what this is all about. Let's move on. We're going to talk about plastics, and we're going to talk about what action can be done, the role of governments, and how we can move forward as ordinary citizens. And I think we're going to take a break. Please stay tuned with us, and we will be right back.
LabModal manufactures a highly distinctive and exclusive range of interior solutions that combines functional excellence with design appeal. Solutions with integrated, innovative, ergonomic features to well-designed workplaces. Our company is based on the inherent values that shape the core of who we are. It is through our living values that we continue to fulfill the promise of our ideal and environmental design standards. Each and every groundbreaking product we've introduced over the years has been the result of our team's hard work and dedication to provide our absolute best to who we care most about, who is our customers. Whether the job is big or small, our team is used to solving complicated tasks and makes sure to get projects to successful completion. Whether it is local or global. This is why LabModal is known as one of Europe's leading manufacturers of innovative system solutions for devices used in laboratory facilities, hospitals, and educational facilities. Solutions that can be easily adapted to the growing needs and workflows demands of the future. LabModal, designing safe.
For your hospital chemical storage classroom interior design, school furniture storage units, fume cupboards for schools or hospital system cabinets, you may please get in touch with LabModal via email at info@labmodal.com or visit their website at www.labmodal.com. Welcome back, and you're still watching us live here in the Filipinos world. For your skin care, you may check Nika's Sparkling Skin and become a distributor or a reseller in your own locality. Hi to Julie Ang of Bettina Boutique Studio in Limkit Kai Center. Happy birthday to Joy Taran Patalyar, and thanks to Joseph Wamenal. Plastic is one of the most commonly used materials in the world, but with only 12% of all plastic waste recycled. Efforts to limit its environmental impact and find alternatives have increased. Paul? Hello?
Turn the conversation over to Emma, someone who has graced previously on the Filipinos World. I'd like to for our new viewers, and to remind people, can you please describe what degrade does, why, the benefits, and how plastic can be viewed positively?
Okay, I'll do my best. So our goal at Degrade, the company that we run here in the UAE, is to provide a sustainable solution for plastic pollution. We do that by recycling PET plastic and we turn it into clothing. So we try and provide a completely closed loop process where we collect the PET via our Simply Bottles initiative, which we run here in the region. We then recycle it and then we make it into new products. So it's a whole closed loop because those products can also be recycled. And our green spun yarn is made into hundreds of different fabrics. So we're turning a single-use bottle into something that's got so many different kinds of uses. We engage companies and organizations who are already buying uniforms or workwear or accessories or whatever it is with a sustainable procurement option, which no one else is offering them. And we do really support the 5 Rs, with refuse being the first and the most important. But we know how important plastic is, because in 99% of cases, plastic is almost always the greenest packaging solution. So whilst we are not purporting to use more plastic, what we're saying is that plastic is a very green option and should be used as such.
I think we've got a video, Emma, of Degrade Dubai, which we'd like to show, which will explain what Degrade does.
Great.
Yeah, it's already being shown, Paul, actually.
I see. Okay. Is it live?
Yes, it is live. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already being. All right. Yeah, Paul. As Emma was discussing about degrade, that has been shown to whilst she was explaining on that.
Okay. So Emma, a question for you. What are the biggest challenges when getting people to think about plastic in a new way? Is it all about re-educating, changing the mindset, taking more responsibility for the environment or their community? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, we know there's a tsunami of negative press about plastic. I mean, every day you can look at the news or listen to the radio and you hear another headline about how plastic's damaging the ocean or the environment. But we talked earlier, all plastic's not equal. I mean, of course there are plastic items that we probably don't need, whether we can refuse the plastic straw or not take the plastic cutlery with our home delivery. But we have to remember that plastic's just about 1% of total waste, and yet we're spending like 99% of resources and time worrying about plastic. I mean, we set here in the region, in the UAE, we set up our Simply Bottles initiative to educate people about plastic and recycling. And we want to give them real facts and encourage them to change their behavior, which is the real key. If plastic is disposed of responsibly, and then it won't end up littering the environment. And so we run lots of different activities with schools and businesses to show people how just their actions, just by littering, it's what's causing the damage. And we try and run fun educational activities to engage people and get them really thinking about how they can change their behavior. So the biggest challenge is really, getting hold of the people and educating them and making them see the facts about plastic, which they've never really heard of before. They've just seen negative press.
Well, there's a video clip which I think we may show later, which I've seen as like an exercise of Degrade demonstrating what does it mean to understand different types of plastic and how they actually need different treatment. But we had a conversation offline, which actually, to keep it simple, and really this is all about trying to keep an awareness of plastic at a simple level to understand what to do. You talked about a couple of golden rules almost for what to do to manage waste.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be very, very complicated about this. What we're finding is that the more difficult it is, the less people want to do it, and that's human nature, and I get that. But really, it's very easy. Just keep your dry recyclables separate from your food waste and your garden waste. So anything that's a recyclable, if it's plastic or if it's glass or if it's aluminium, paper, it can all really go into the same bin. Because the waste management companies in general are very good at segregating and separating that waste. As long as it's not contaminated with food or with with all the other gunk that might get put into the same bin. So just keep your recyclables separate. If you can, rinse them out that really helps as well, but not 100% necessary. But just, think about which bin you're putting your food waste and your plastics into, and then we can take it from there.
Indeed. So I'd like to move the discussion on to talking about where we can actually expect to get the biggest change when it comes to getting governments to think about plastic, recycling, waste management in a new way, particularly in the light of the data that Chris's research and your work has introduced. The challenge is the fact that it may probably contradict existing policy decisions for plastic waste management. What's your experience in terms of working with governments?
Yeah, I mean, we do spend a lot of time talking to key government departments here. We're working closely with the Abu Dhabi Environment Agency, the municipalities, the Minister of Climate Change and Education. I mean, governments, they first of all don't always have the budget to get behind recycling, because sometimes they have different priorities, especially in different parts of the world where, healthcare and even, poverty and those kind of things obviously have to take a much higher position. But also governments are under pressure from lobbyists who may have a reason for being anti-plastic. As Chris talked about, some of these green agencies don't always have the right reasons at heart. And also the public put a lot of pressure on businesses, which then put pressure on government, because the public are getting wrong information and they think plastic is bad. So, for example, a lot of high street stores now are using paper bags in their retail outlets because the public have put pressure on them, and now they're using paper, which actually we all know is not as green as plastic. So it is hard. The government have a lot of pressure. We try and influence them as much as we can when they're making policies. Here in the UAE, the federal government are looking at extended producer responsibility, which means that the companies that are making the plastic will have pressure put on them to try and recover a percentage of the plastic they're making. And we're really working hard with the government to push that through. And the other thing is, there's laws here in the UAE where you can't make plastic bottles back into plastic bottles because they're working on that. There's a lot of reasons. So there's one of my point is there's lots of different ways that we can try and influence the government to try and make sure that when we do recycle the plastic, that we're able to use it, and that we're able to then put pressure on companies to make sure that they're getting back the plastic they're producing, but also to educate the public so that they're putting pressure on companies for the right reasons.
Yes, I mean, the job of the scientist is to present, research data, objectively, and hopefully within the TFW, we are addressing a very, very important issue globally for the environment objectively. And it seems that a lot of the work that you're doing and Chris's research has uncovered provides us with real data, real case study examples to help governments rethink their policy decisions. I mean, do you actually imagine, sitting in front of a government official and saying, here's hard data, this is how you can better understand to implement a better quality decision, and seeing almost that sea change take place because that person happens to be of the right level within the government to make a change? I'd love
that to happen. I think, there's a slight difference between what somebody like Chris is presenting. He's presenting scientific data, which is absolutely vital. I think the data that we can provide is useful. I think that, because we're collecting so much plastic from schools and businesses here, we can provide information about what kind of plastic is being recycled, who are the people that are recycling it. We get feedback from companies and schools, and we can present that sort of information about what those companies, what those schools, what they want. We can provide that kind of empirical data to governments and help them make decisions about producer responsibility and that sort of thing. We're not doing a lot of scientific research here at D-Grade, but I do think the information we can provide is useful. And we do talk to senior government officials, and they do listen to what we're doing because we're on the ground and we're getting tangible feedback. So that is important, absolutely.
There's a discussion I was made aware of when we chatted about how you're now working with a new partner, and I've come across research, and we're going to mention this later on, about joint ventures between manufacturers and plastic bank. I think some recent information within Degrade that perhaps you could share with our viewers demonstrates more the collaboration that's possible when you work with the right partners to achieve the same end goals.
Yeah. Well, I mean, collaboration is key. We can't do it on our own. We need all the partners and all the stakeholders that we're dealing with, whether it is a government body, whether it's a business that invests in us, because we have to be profitable to be sustainable. We have to sell our uniforms and our textiles, because without that we can't pay our rent and pay our staff. So of course that's really, really key. So we have to have all the partners, and we've been extremely lucky that we've had an investment partner that has now come on board. They're called Emeraude. They're a French polymer company. They've always been very, very environmentally aware because of the nature of their business, and by investing in Degrade, they're able to now have a tangible green division, which they're going to call Emeraude Green, and Degrade will sit within that. And to be on board with a plastics company who are really looking at ways better to serve the environment, better to do things in an environmental and green way, with what we all believe to be a green product, by the way. None of us are worried about the fact that it's plastic. But to have a huge company with a global reach behind us it just gives us a new layer. And not only that, but actually is another partner and will be able to give us an even better reach to with our stakeholders, to really try and get the facts to the government, to try and spread the word and really help us with our Simply Bottles educational program.
Well, that's fantastic news, and I'm very happy for you, for Degrade, and it sounds like the perfect collaboration. And also to achieve, more of a critical mass in terms of being able to present a bigger, stronger message to a bigger audience with the weight of, more of a heavyweight partner alongside you will make a huge difference. We're going to talk about the media's treatment of plastic later on. In fact, I'm going to move on to that subject now. I sent, after our first interview, a news item I came across on the BBC focusing on the so-called compostable PLA plastic. And you immediately pointed out to me, in my naivety and ignorance, how misleading this report and this perception of PLA is. Perhaps you can enlighten our readers on this subject, Emma.
Well, I'm not an expert, so you probably do need a scientist to really give you facts. But what I do know a few things. So what we firstly know is that PLA is a very expensive packaging solution. And, when you compare it with PET, it's hugely more expensive. And our problem with it really is that twofold. Firstly, it actually really doesn't decompose or compost here in this region. And in fact, landfills are set up so that nothing decomposes in there, whether it's paper, whether it's plastic, whatever it is, nothing really decomposes in a landfill. And even when PLA gets out into the desert, as it surely will, because people are littering, it doesn't properly decompose, unlike PET, which does. The second problem we really have with PLA is that it looks exactly the same as PET, so you can't tell. And what will happen is that somebody will put a PLA bottle into the recycling bin, and it will come into our factory to get recycled, but it won't recycle in the same way that PET does. What it does, it turns into a sticky gunk. And then what it will do is it will completely spoil that entire batch of the PET that's going through at the same time. So not only will it not recycle, it will actually spoil all of the other PET that is trying to be recycled, will then have to be thrown away. And there's not enough PLA for someone to set up a recycling plant just to recycle PLA. It's just not worth it. So first of all, we shouldn't be going down the PLA route. And many countries and governments around the world are actually banning PLA now, or biodegradable or oxy-degradable plastic, because it just doesn't recycle. So that's really good. And I think the other thing that we have to really be aware of is the more recycling we do of recyclables like PET, the easier it is to recycle them. As soon as we start diverting into so-called new green solutions that actually make the matter worse, the harder it is to recycle, the less likely it is that people will want to set up recycling plants. And so then nothing will be recycled. So we shouldn't be finding a solution for a problem that isn't there. Let's just use the green plastic. Let's just use PET and recycle it.
Indeed, and one of the things that we've had discussions on, and it's almost an institutionalized resistance to accept contradictory evidence to commonly held positions on this and other plastic waste-related items within the media. And, we're not here to propagandize, for plastic. We're just here to say, let's look at the facts and examine the facts. But when you've got resistance to that, at the highest levels within the media, that's quite a challenge. And hopefully the viewers, having their minds maybe opened towards a different perception of plastic, can actually say, I'm now aware of new data coming from the media that I'm not comfortable with because it doesn't ring true. What's your experience of that, Emma?
Well, look, again, not all media is equal. Here I am today on your program, and you're giving me an opportunity to talk about the positive side of plastic. And we've had some really good support with the National, the Khaleej Times, the Arab Times, CNN even have given us a platform to be able to talk about plastic. But I do think on the whole, in general, the media is putting out a lot of propaganda about how bad plastic is. And we have to try and get over that. We get a lot of pushback from people who think that they've understood the facts about plastic, and they say we're purporting to push plastic, which we're absolutely not. We're just saying, plastic is a necessary product solution, and whilst we're using it, let's recycle and reuse it. And we've got a tangible solution. We're turning the plastic into something that's very useful. So, it's about getting the media on board and on side. Trying to make sure that the right facts are getting put out there. And, we really appreciate platforms such as yourselves, TFW, who are helping us to do that. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you for that. It's mutual. There are other big misconceptions that are out there that can be addressed. We don't have enough time on this program to go through them all. But we're now in Plastic Free July. And there's a call to action for single-use plastic. There's complexity embedded within that call to action. What would you say, Emma, about a plastic-free July?
Well, I'd love someone to see how they could go plastic free. So what, you're not going to use your phone, you're not going to sit in your car, you're not, there's just like a million pieces of plastic that cleaning your teeth, or, all these things that we do. So, for someone to go plastic free is crazy. I mean, it's impossible. You have to go back to the Middle Ages to do that. And also, anything plastic free, paper free, it's all a bit crazy. But I mean, we've spent the best part of the last hour saying, what a green solution plastic is. So, for the world to go plastic free in July, it doesn't make sense. We should be actually embracing plastic and saying, let's make it a recycling month. Let's use the plastic responsibly. Let's make sure we change our behavior. Don't throw things away, and take personal responsibility. It's nobody else's fault. It's our own responsibility that the plastic is getting into the ocean.
Indeed. Agnes, do we have time for the video of Degrade's recycling of plastic bottles?
Well, we can show a bit. John, do we have time to do that? Yeah, we will show that, Paul, now.
Okay.
Yes, give us a minute. It's there now.
My t-shirt is made from about 10 plastic bottles. My name is Emma Barber, and I'm the Managing Director of Degrade. How do we do it? We take a plastic bottle, including the label and the cap, and we send it to our plant in Kizad, where we wash it and we flake it. The bottles are turned into this little high-quality flake. Once we have the flake, it's bagged and it's sent to our partner factories in India, Pakistan and China, where it's heated and extruded and turned into this lovely soft 100% polyester, recycled polyester fibre. The fibre is then spun into our trademark green spun yarn, and once we have the yarn, we can turn it into products such as my t-shirt this polo shirt, or our lovely mannequins. We basically provide a sustainable option to companies that are looking to procure textiles such as uniforms or workwear or masks, accessories, that kind of thing, actually helping them segregate and collect plastic, then it's recycled, and then it's turned into new products that have a longer life. Sustainability isn't just about being environmentally friendly, it's also about wealth creation, job creation.
All right, Paul, there you go. I think we flashed that rightly.
Okay.
Pretty great.
Well, it's
My
very
t-shirt
important
is made
that we
from-
actually, give Emma a little bit of exposure to the fantastic work that they do. And I'm a huge fan, Emma. In a very obviously unbiased way to what you're doing in Dubai. And I know Agnes is also, but it's great to see, living proof of what you can do, applying science intelligently, for practical use. It's wonderful. And I'm also very, very happy about the recent partnership with Emerald and the green aspect of that's going to come through. So unfortunately for you, we're going to have you back on the program again to talk about that at some point in the future. I'd just like you to maybe passing thoughts, we've got Plastic Bank coming up on the program in the future. We'll have the CEO on that, doing some great work in the Philippines. In Manila mainly, we do need more locations for waste recycling of plastic in the Philippines. But what would you say to viewers on the Filipino world as your parting words today, Emma?
Well, I actually have to say that I think the Philippines is leading the way, especially in your region, because when we may have thought in the past about some of the landfill sites and the tipping and the Smoky Mountain and how awful it was. The government has made massive strides, and now there are no open landfills in the Philippines, which I think is incredible. So they've really done a huge amount to really try and sort their waste management out, which is, like I say, it's leading the way in that region. So I think that the Filipinos should feel really, really proud and happy about the steps that they're taking and have done so quickly over the last few years. But, I just can't reiterate enough, and I said it 10 times, and I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing it, but it is about personal responsibility. We must realize there is no way. We can't just throw things away. We have to put things in the right bin. We have to recycle. And and we have to look at the facts. Just find out the facts.
Emma, I'm going to have to just stop you for a second. I want to say thank you ever so much. Wonderful to see you as always. Agnes, can you close us out, please? And look forward to seeing you again, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emma. And thank you always for gracing here in the Filipinos world. It's our honor to have you on board anytime soon. Yeah. All right. Paul will not pause for a break because we're running out of time. And I would just like to thank all our viewers who are tuning with us right now. I'll just go down in random. Joseph Fominal. Thank you, Joseph. Jane Manalang Reyes. Ruel Yumol. He said here, Miss Agnes, shocking truth with Greenpeace, where I became a long time ago a volunteer. That's really true, and I was also shocked about that. Shout out to Papa Burritos, Roland being me. Thank you. And then Sam and also Renimar, his son, also watching from Dubai. Thank you so much to all our friends who are watching with us right at this moment still. For suggestions, comments, feedbacks, please get in touch with us at thefilipinosworld@gmail.com. You may also follow us in Instagram and YouTube, The Filipinos World. If you want to become one of our sponsors, you may do so by sending us an email at thefilipinosworld@gmail.com. And if you think you're one of the Filipinos who can inspire other Filipinos, please send us an email at thefilipinosworld@gmail.com. Okay, Paul?
For this, we say we bring Filipinos closer to the world, we bring the world closer to Filipinos, and Filipinos closer to each other.
But before that, I would like to inform that next week we will have another episode for Wellness Matters, the what's and ifs of it, with the Dr. Christopher Cheng of the Philippine Heart Center, and of course Miss Jane Beaumont of London, United Kingdom, and hopefully one more guest with us. But we wish to the TFW wish to thank Miss Emma Barber for gracing here in the Filipinos World for today's episode, along with the pre-recorded video of Dr. Chris De Armit from Phantom Plastics. This has been your TFW Agnes, thanking together with the TFW executive producer, Mr. Paul Markoviches, and we wish to thank Engineer Jong Santigo, Engineer Ernie Banzon, the station manager of RPN station, Miss Jin Saruhijas, and our social media team, Maria Stella Salon, Mayan, Mercurio, and Mount Mom, and of course, the kaagapay ako ng bawat OFW Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much. Paul, thank you for that wonderful interview with Emma. Thank you so much for that. And
my pleasure as always, Agnes. Great job editing the program today. Fantastic work. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Well, we have to kind of like do it at the last hour, but that was wonderful.
Yeah.
Don't
tell anybody.
Yes. Thank you, Emma. That was so nice of you, really. Our pleasure is always with you here in the Filipinos World. Goodbye, everyone.